This is the Super Rad BMX podcast. Down the first straight is the cruising Cornhusker over the jump bonsai Brad. Now your host Brad Fanshaw and Tim Lilladora.
Hey everybody, this is Super Rad BMX podcast, and man, we are excited because we keep piling on the guests. We've got great, if you listen to the Mike Miranda interview, you found out the secrets of Hollywood, secrets that only we could tell you because Tim worked with him at the Woodward BMX camp, and he worked for me at Vision Streetwear. So go back and listen to that one as well. And just as a reminder, I'm Brad Fanshaw, and my co-host with me is...
I'm Tim Lilladora. Glad to have you here.
That's right. And we are just kicking it off because every episode, as I said, is supporting BMX. We want to keep it alive and keep things going. Tim has added some really cool videos on his how-to page on our Radmatic channel. So go check that out as well. But remember, please follow us here at Radmatic on YouTube, but also on iTunes and everywhere you can get a podcast. Find us, give us a 5-star rating and a positive comment. That helps, and you can't tell how much it helps. And our Facebook page and our Instagram are both Super Rad BMX. I got to be honest, we do most of our stuff. We put up all kinds of great photography and great images on our Instagram page. So go there and follow Super Rad BMX. Tim, I think we've got something new to add at the end of the show now, don't we? Aren't you working on a commercial?
Oh, yeah. We have some really cool new Super Rad BMX logo shirts, and they're stylized and based on old company logos or old BMX parts. And we think you're going to really like those new shirts.
Cool. Nothing better than Super Rad swag. So, hey, watch the ad at the end and you'll find it. If you're listening to this on our iTunes channel or somewhere else, just go to radmatic.com. That's where you'll find that stuff. Okay, let's get going because today we're really excited to welcome none other than gOrk. That's right, Craig Barrette to the Super Rad BMX podcast. And, Craig, we've been getting ready for this show. And I think you're going to have to unmute your mic. There we go. And I want to start it off right with one big thing. First of all, hello and welcome to Super Rad BMX.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's cool to be on episode number 4.
Yeah, I mean, you're right in the first part of it, so you can help us shape this puppy. Okay, gOrk. I've known you for decades, and I have never asked you where gOrk came from. Now, before you answer, I did know that Elon Musk has on his XAI chatbot, artificial intelligence, he named gOrk. Okay?
Oh, yeah. I never knew.
Oh, man.
I do know that Star Wars, episode number 2 or film number 2, they had a Resistance character that was named gOrk. And then probably the most well-known, and it's medical slang. Do you know the medical slang?
Yeah, I have heard that. That's been around for a while. It's like
medical slang for someone with severe brain damage. So where did your gOrk come from?
No.
So the nickname gOrk is BMX nickname given to me by fellow neighborhood thrashers that we all hung out at this bike shop. But the long version is it started off, everybody was getting titty twisters, purple nurpled at the, you're hanging around the bike shop and, somebody sneaks up behind you and just wham, you get a purple nurpled. So everybody starts walking around, standing around, covering them up, so you don't get nurpled. And then that leaves your chin wide open. So this guy named Rusty, Crusty Rusty, comes up with this method of gOrking people. So, while you have your arms folded, he'd just come up and wham and slam you underneath the chin. And when he does it, he gOrk, you get, so that was getting gOrked, was pushing up on your chin. So thus, if you get gOrked a lot, then you're going to have a long neck, uh, supposedly. So that came right around the same time, junior high, 8th grade, I get, or actually 7th grade, you get diagnosed with scoliosis. They test you in gym class for scoliosis, for curvature of the spine. So I had curvature of the spine, I had scoliosis. So 8th grade, I get my back brace, and the kind of big neck brace is called the Milwaukee brace.
Oh
And
yeah.
it has one big metal beam up in the front of it, and then it hinges around your neck and has 2 beams. And basically, it's pushing with pads, it's pushing all over your body to straighten out your spine. So the first day I get it, I'm tell my mom, on the way back, and it's like, stop off at California Peddler, at the bike shop. I want to show everybody my new brace. And, of course, it's new, so it's really pushing up on my chin. So I walk in there, and they all start laughing. It's like, you're getting gOrked like 24 hours a day now. So I was the permanent gOrk. So I just, it's like, all right, cool. I got a nickname. So that was my, put it on, I was known as the gOrk. And, so I had it on the back of my pants and on my helmet, and, just ran with it. That was to me, it was a cool nickname, even though it was probably, kind of a meant derogatory, or, kind of a put down towards me and my back brace. But,
But by
Yeah, yeah.
embracing it, it made it not mean anything to the guys who wanted to tease you with it, right?
yeah, embracing it. Yeah.
Yes. And
Well, it's kind of interesting. It's interesting because, like, when I send you emails, I'm like, I don't know if he likes being called gOrk all the time. Should I call him Craig? Should I say Dear Craig or Dear gOrk?
Yeah, no, I still go by gOrk,
Yeah.
maybe my neighbors, I introduce myself as Craig these days, but, and
Right.
Todd Huffman's one of the few guys that still calls me Craig every single time. Like, he refuses to call me gOrk, but even my parents, they still,
Hey, gOrk, get over here.
Yeah.
hey, you're in my phone as gOrk. When it comes up, it's gOrk. It's
Yeah. Yeah, all my grandkids, all 8 of them are all, I'm Grandpa gOrk, it's
Oh man, that's cool.
That's cool. So
That's
so
really cool.
we're just right into a brand new episode, and we've solved 2 things. Number 1, now we know where gOrk came from, and number 2, we learned why guys stand like this all the time. We thought it was like guys trying to show off their muscles or something. No, it's so they don't get a titty twister. And
Yeah.
that's the history of why guys stand with their arms crossed. So it all started in your bike shop there.
Yeah, California Peddler, Sacramento, California.
So we want to kind of get a little bit of your background, but really what we're wanting to talk about tonight is get into the nitty gritty of your time at ABA and transitioning into the museum, BMX Hall of Fame, things like that. But I think for a lot of our listeners, I know you've been on a lot of podcasts and you've been interviewed before, but there's always interest in that. And so why don't you give us just a little bit of your background, like BMXA days, when you were the editor at BMX Action, the most factory magazine.
Yeah,
Everybody's dream job.
Yeah, definitely everybody's dream job. Feel so lucky that I got chosen for it, and unfortunately it was the last 4.5 years of BMX Action before it got canned, which such a tragedy for the sport,
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in Sacramento, California, raced side hacks, raced UBR, all that, all over Northern California. My brother and I were sponsored by Gary Littlejohn, for side hacks and for cruisers and stuff. My brother was really fast. I was mediocre, or pretty slow.
Now, is your brother older or younger?
Older. Yeah. 2.5, 2, 3 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah, and he raced pro cruiser. He did really good. He was #1 cruiser the first year they ever raced cruisers in UBR. So I guess that was around 1980. So he got the
Yep.
#1 title then.
Yeah.
Might
Very
have,
cool.
might have raced you, Tim. Did you ever race UBR at all?
I'd never raced UBR because we didn't have UBR in Arizona when I was there because that was, ABA land. And then in Nebraska, we didn't have UBR and
Yeah.
probably had an opportunity to go to one or two, but probably was working at the newspaper
Yeah,
by that time.
Like we
Yeah.
talked about in show number 1 about how it was a all-consuming 24/7 job between running races, doing 3 publications,
Yeah.
and everything else.
Yeah, I wanted to hear Gork's take on all of
Exactly.
that, but
Yeah.
that's jumping ahead though. So
yeah. So then I got into freestyle. Met up with Diz Hicks. We started the gOrk trick team together. He was the star rider, and I was the promoter and team manager, and uh, booking shows and state fairs or bike shops or wherever we book a show at. We were doing it. So that led to CW sponsoring us and led me to be being friending Bob Morales at the AFA, and kind of got you know hints that if I moved to Southern California, I might be able to work for the AFA, or it was right at the same time. Freestyle Magazine did an article on the gOrk trick team right when CW was getting into it. So anyways, I moved to Southern California, risk the big move, and hope to make it in the BMX industry. And fortunate, I got a job. Mark Soraya, who was the team manager at CW, who was sponsoring us, he talked Roger into hiring me at CW. And so I worked at CW for about 6 months, and then I got a call from Moz, and looking for a new, the next editor after Giberson was about to
wow.
retire. Giberson was talking about quitting in 6 months or, whenever, so they wanted to, find his replacement pretty soon. And so I was in the right place at the right time. And,
Yeah, perfect. Perfect
Now, when you
timing,
worked-
perfect.
Go ahead, Tim.
Oh, perfect timing, but I mean, knowing you all of these years, people saw within you that spark, that marketing promotion spark that began when you started your trick team. And so, one thing leads to another. I'm sure Bob Osborn caught wind of you and it's like, hey, this guy can really make things happen. And I know you've done a lot since then, but man, working at BMX Action, that's what we all wanted to do, right, Brad? I mean, Brad and I.
Well, I mean, everybody. It was the Bible, and then when we went to work at ABA, it was like we were at least at the races. We were doing publications and
Yeah.
photo shoots, but Oz had it. I mean, he was in Southern California, had it seemed like everybody had a Porsche. Everybody was jumping Porsches. I mean, it was just
Well,
that
BMX Action had the trick, the rad factor that none of the other magazines could pull off, really. I mean,
attitude.
it was
Had
it
attitude.
was
Yeah. And they encapsulated it. Now, when you worked at CW, did you work in Fullerton or down in that area at that
yeah,
place?
yeah, it was actually right on the border. It was in
Right with the
Placentia.
building that had the arches in the front?
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, I know
Barn
exactly. Yep,
with
that
all
old
barred
building.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that building.
Yeah, it was in Placentia, and it's right on the border.
Yeah,
Fullerton's on the other side of the freeway, and then they're on, the
by the
Placentia.
railroad tracks and by
Yeah.
all that. Yeah, I know exactly where you mean. That was the old factory there. So you go to work. Oz gives you the call, and I'm sure, at that age and everything, it was probably pretty intimidating walking in there and doing that. How'd that go?
Yeah, well, I'd been there before when they did the freestyling article on the gOrk trick team. So when we did that, that was our introduction to, meeting Oz and meeting the whole staff and Andy Jenkins. And drove around. We did the photo shoot, and met Don Toshak, who is the managing editor, and so I sort of knew those guys. And plus, well, when I had my trick team, I was doing a newsletter called the Bogmaster, and it was just a legal size, double-sided Xerox newsletter that I sent out like every month, or whenever, So
The Bogmaster?
yeah, that was another term from all of us, the thrashers, all the guys.
That was the height of zines too, man. I mean, zines and newsletters and everything,
Yeah, see, I just thought it was a newsletter, but I'd never heard of what a zine was. I had no idea what a zine was, and Andy's like, "Oh, that's such a cool zine," and I was like, "Okay." I thought it was a newsletter, but I sent it out to everybody in the industry, so that kind of helped, and just helped hype up Diz, and then also, those guys got to read what I was writing in the stories, because I'd always have little stories, the adventures of gOrk and Diz and Wobbly Bob or Bob Whitney, whoever was our third guy on our team at that time. But we, it made enough of an impression that's when they wanted to replace Guyby, they thought of me. So.
That's cool, because probably when you were doing that, you didn't realize that eyes like that would be on it and it would transition to something so different.
Oh, yeah. No idea.
And they probably looked at it from the same attitude, gOrk, that hey, if this guy can do something and publish it almost monthly, and actually stick with it, then with a little bit of help, he could come in here and work on BMXA.
Yeah. It was a good, first step.
I have a quick question. So then how long until, like, were you at BMX Action right until the end?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And that's
And
when
then how soon? Yeah.
when they combined the two mags, they decided, because advertising was so low, the industry was in the dumps, and so they decided to combine freestyling with BMX Action and rename it Go with the Writer's Manual. And for that, they only needed one editor, so they chose my roommate Lou. So Mark Lumen became the editor, and I was out.
Okay.
Because like freestyling went quarterly, if I remember right, and then it merged. Didn't it go quarterly for a while, and then?
No, they started off.
Did it start off quarterly? Okay.
Yeah, it started off as a quarterly, but then picked up to a monthly pretty quick. But yeah, towards the end, I mean, we actually have. There's actually, that first issue of Go has contents of what would have been in BMX Action in that last issue, because we had the issue all done. We were ready to go, no pun intended, but the magazine was ready to send, and that's when they made that decision. So
that happens in publishing, doesn't it? I mean, I remember we had the last issue of Bicycles and Dirt ready to go when it was canned, and those articles transitioned into the ABA paper, like with some content in there.
Yeah. Wow. Now, were you guys also doing USBA at that time, or did that come afterwards?
Well, it was ABA Action.
Yeah.
And Bicycles and Dirt, and then we did Arizona BMXer, right, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, as soon as we started doing Bicycles and Dirt, it was like,
it's brutal.
I mean, like, that's where the focus, I mean, like, that just overwhelmed our entire art department. I mean, it was like, what? We're going to do this too?
I mean, shooting points alone for the ABA Action took a toll, and then everything, I mean, think if you had to do 4 issues of BMX Action every month. That's kind of what it was like, plus go to every race and do photo shoots and do Tim and I did the ads too. We were the ad production and the new products.
gOrk, it was so archaic when I started there that they're like, hey, you got to design some ads. I'm like, I have to design some what? And we were, I wasn't an art director at that point. I mean, I was like using Letraset border tape, and it wasn't straight, and you
Yeah.
know, uh, by the time you got there, I'm hoping it was more sophisticated than it was when I was there, you know.
Yeah. So
But
when I started at ABA, and I think, were you there at all, Brad, or had you just left to go to Vision?
No, I think I was already at Vision because I think Denny was there. He was there because I remember talking to him. He goes, "Oh, gOrk's coming to work here," and I was like, "Oh, really?" And thought that was cool because I was over at Vision already. I'd been over there maybe a year.
How much of a gap was it before you left BMX Action and then went to work for the ABA and ran that publication?
So
Was it immediate?
yeah, pretty much like 24 hours.
That's what I thought.
Oh,
That's
really?
what I thought. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, really, like months before, Spike Jones had asked me, because we kind of saw the writing on the wall, advertising was down, and they had a scare that, wow, this might be the last issue. And that was maybe 6 months earlier or something. So I remember Spike was kind of panicking. He's a young kid that just moved to Southern California and, had no idea what he'd do in the future. And
Poor guy just couldn't make it, could he?
Yeah, little did we all know what would become of Spike Jones. But
Yes.
he had asked, kind of worried, wow, what would happen if the magazine died like tomorrow? What would you do? And I quickly thought about it, and I'm like, I'd call ABA. I would go to work for ABA, because as long as there's BMX, ABA is going to be there, So that's how I felt. And so when it did happen, next day after I got over the shock of it all, I called ABA to talk to Clayton, and I think I called him from home, and then I went into the office, and there was a message that Clayton had called right around the same time. So he was trying to reach me. He had the same idea, and then I was trying to reach out to him.
Wow.
And so it was kind of cool. We so I drove out there, or they might have. Yeah, I think I drove out there and had the job interview, and
they didn't send ABA scareways for you.
Yeah,
they didn't have them by then.
No, they didn't. It was gone by then. But oh boy, the ABA planes, those were
the old ABA plane.
Oh,
Track it down. I found a photo of that airplane, and I knew that so once an airplane gets that FAA number, it's number for life. So that plane still lives in Louisiana somewhere, and it's like
dude, it's a Piper Navajo chieftain, isn't it? A Piper Navajo chieftain or something like that. I want to see that.
I think it was, but see, after you left, Tim, and I was there, we bought an air charter business, and it was ABA Air, American Business Air is what it was called. That's what we named it. And we would take whatever plane was not chartered. And that was the big thing was, Clayton goes, "Brad, we've got a jet." And I went, "Oh, cool. Did we ever take the jet?" No, one time we took the jet, and it was like the shortest flight. We always took the single engine plane because it was never leased out or chartered. And you get catered in food, but you couldn't eat it because you had to wear a mask because the plane wasn't even pressurized, Now, I will say most of the time we took a twin engine turboprop, and that was okay, but there were some scary times. Definitely scary times.
Yeah, I heard plenty. I heard plenty of stories that Clayton would tell us all the time, and
a whole episode dedicated to that.
Oh, we could. There's one worth sharing right now where we had the good plane, and Clayton and I were sitting there across from each other, and there was a guy that worked for us. His name was Keith, and he was a real chatterbox, and the pilot was, certified guy. He was on his own. He didn't have a co-pilot, and this was a really nice plane. It had a big, giant color screen that showed the weather, and Keith asked, he goes, "Can I go sit up in the co-pilot seat?" And we're all like, no. And the pilot goes, "Yeah, come on up." And so they're up there talking, and they got their headphones on, and he's pointing at the screen and everything. Well, we're in this weather where this plane is jumping, lightning's hitting it. I mean, it was white knuckles, guys. And Clayton's looking at me, I'm looking at him. We land and everybody gets off the plane and the pilot walks up to Clayton and I and he goes, "Yeah, we're pretty lucky. He goes, we probably shouldn't have made that one." And we're like, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "Yeah, that was pretty close." He goes, "There are a couple times when we dropped and we got and Clayton looks at him and he goes, "Well, then why were you talking to Keith and doing?" And he goes, "To kind of keep my mind out of it." And he goes, "I was telling him that we shouldn't even be up in the air when the color's like this." And we're like, "Oh my God, I'm glad they had headphones on because we would have, it was just nuts. It was nuts."
Almost into Leonard Skinner, huh?
Oh yeah, exactly. So BMXA, do you have any really fond or really great stories, one or two that you can share from your days at BMXA? I mean, you said it yourself. It was like the dream job. What was something that just would be a great story that maybe you haven't even told before?
Yeah, probably the best story. So not long after I started at BMXA, that's when Andy, needed help because Freestyle the magazine was growing so much. So they hire Mark Luman, known as Lou.
Yeah.
So Lou from Kalamazoo, he came from Michigan, and he also, I think he had a zine. He used to send little mixtapes to Andy. They kind of were into the same type of music, and so I think Lou came on board like maybe a month or 2 months because I was living with Bob Morales and Todd Huffman at the time down in Huntington Beach and driving from Huntington up to Torrance. And, I'd been doing that, going up the Pacific Coast Highway for a couple months. So finally, once they hired Lou and we kind of teamed up, we both needed a place to stay. So Lou and I, the whole time when I was at Wizard, we were roommates in three or four different houses. Yeah, four different houses or condos, apartments, whatever. But the best one, it was the third place that we lived in, and that was right when they hired Spike fresh out of high school, and Spike and his Rockville BMX buddy, known as Nubby, they drove out. Spike actually skipped his high school graduation just to get to LA as soon as he could. So he drives his brown car out there, and Lou and I had just rented a 3-bedroom townhouse, and it just so happened to be like right on the backside of Cashua Street. So we just lucked out, and
Like
I remember
a block away from work, then, right?
we were like 20 seconds away from work. So if you go out the back of we called it the Leg Bug One house. So that was our phone number, was Leg Bug One, and so Leg Bug One house, you go out the back door, by the garages, and there's a big giant wall, and so you'd hop over that wall, and that puts you in the parking lot of the building right across the street from Wizard Publications. And so you just hop that wall and walk through a parking lot, cross the street, and you were there. So
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be both good and bad because you'd be tempted to go into work all the time. Oh, we got that deadline. If you were like a half
Oh, yeah.
hour away, but since you're right there, man.
Yeah. We had keys to Wizard, so yeah, we if something wasn't going on at our house with a whole bunch of riders dropping in or sleeping on the couch or whatever, there was something going on over at Wizard, late at night. It was jam sessions with Andy and he had a kind of a industrial band called Factory. So they'd be practicing we had a ramp set up and Spike would be shredding on the ramps at night, just doing a little mini ramp session and, in between us doing deadlines or they're playing at the Xerox machine, just messing around with, take a photo and
So-
you spin it as the Xerox machine's going, you'd get these
So
weird.
it's not like a corporate office where, the doors get locked at 6 p.m. and
Well, he
No,
said they had the keys to the place.
the kids were in control, man.
Yeah. But that was the cool atmosphere at Wizard Publications, where, it was just, it really wasn't like work. It was just a fun nonstop party, but serious, just having fun all the time.
As long as you got that issue out, you could have as much fun as you wanted, right?
Oh yeah, yep, yeah, and of course, you know, typical. I'm sure you guys can relate. You know, the deadline, you know, slam the, you
Oh
know,
man.
the last 12 hours before a deadline day. You know, you're working around the clock and trying to get those stories done.
Yeah. No matter how much time you have on a deadline, whether it's 3 hours or 3 days, you're gonna end up using all that time. That's been my experience with any deadline in this type of work, you know.
Yeah,
It's like, well, I've got a little extra time. I can, it's not due until noon tomorrow.
I mean, you were
So
still in the days of paste up over there. I mean, you guys were still doing paste up. I mean, and I mean, we all had to deal with, getting our type, getting our waxing the type, and getting the layouts and everything. I mentioned in episode number 1 that Cheryl and everybody in the art room used to call me Elbows because they'd say,
yeah.
Brad, you got Stu Thompson on your elbow or Greg Hill on your arm, I mean, because it was just because you're always looking at stuff, how can we make it better?
Yeah,
But
I sent Cheryl a link to your guys' first show and said, "Hey, you got to listen to this." They gave you a mention, you know. So
yeah, I can't believe she's still there, man.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that is just incredible. That is, that's dedication, man.
yeah,
And
yeah, it's crazy.
the publication I'm a member, so I get the publication. It always looks great. Always has. As soon as we hired Cheryl, it started looking good. When I was doing the layouts and we had like one part-time artist, Gene Warney, the
Yeah,
cartoonist, you can see that transition. Definitely.
every
So
ad was a cartoon with Warney. It's like, and gOrk, something that if you're ever looking through archives, which is something I want to talk to you about today, but the Warney would always put Easter eggs in the event T-shirts and in
upside
the
down
ads.
tortoise.
What? Yeah, and Mickey Mouse ears, and there's all kinds of stuff he used to. And he'd tell us, he'd go, "Hey, the Midwest Nationals shirt? There's a such and such in there." And we go, Gene, and there's some really hilarious stuff that he would hide in the art.
I
Yeah, I
want to
remember
hear
him.
mostly about gOrk tonight, but I got to I have to at some point tell this Gene Warney story. He came up with Go For It Gopher. Okay.
Right.
Brad, do you remember the time when it was late at night, there was a deadline, and I had like a half page to fill?
I
And what I
don't.
did, I just filled it full of Go For It Gopher cartoons, but I thought I needed to show him coming out of his gopher hole. And so I drew the gopher hole, and I had his head pop up out of the gopher hole just to fill some space. I've never seen anybody so pissed off
Oh, because Warney didn't do it?
because I altered his drawing, and it looked a little weird. So uh, he was a good guy though,
He
but
was
yeah,
awesome.
don't mess with Go For It Gopher, man.
Anything.
Yeah,
So
we still use the gopher a little bit here today. You know, I still try to push it, you know, because that was the ABA mascot, and you
is
know,
the mascot uniform in the museum somewhere?
we have the head. We
You
only
have the
have
head.
we only have the head of the gopher because the body was just somebody threw it out because it stunk so bad.
I was going to say it was probably standing in the corner on its own, right?
Yeah, practically. Yeah, it was so many people just sweated their brains out wearing that
Yeah.
uniform, you know, that
Think
costume.
how many rodeo arenas that thing had been in over the
Yeah,
years.
and I
It's
don't
So
think
many races
and I don't think since 1982 to when it was probably last worn in 2002, you know, that's a long time for it. I don't think anyone ever washed it, so it stunk.
I know it stunk back when I was there in like 85, man, it was horrible. I was like, who puts that on, but uh, a
there's an
lot of the time,
opportunity for a costume company to remake that
Yeah,
and really make their mark,
we
you
talked
know?
about it. That'd be cool. That would be.
yeah, I don't even know where the costume ever came from. Did Goldline make that, Tim, or did we have it made somewhere else? I honestly don't remember. It just
That
appeared
looked
one day.
it was probably purchased from like a National Costumers Catalog or something.
Because they had the helmet and everything, and I don't know.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That'd be a Merle or a Gene Roden question, because that was back.
Or Clayton.
then.
Clayton would know because Clayton's son Jeff was the gopher for so many years.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so was Merle's son. He was before Jeff. Remember?
Steve
Merle's-
or
No, the younger son.
Oh, okay. What was the younger son's name?
I was trying to think it. I was hoping you were going to
Damn.
bail me out and go, "Oh yeah," and I was going to go, "Yeah, that was him."
Darn it.
So BMXA closes down. You get with Clayton, and you head over here to Arizona, and tell us about that transition from BMXA and what you did at ABA and what that transition was like.
Yeah, so probably the biggest change is, when I go there, and interviewing with Denny, Griffiths, and Clayton, and the biggest thing was like, all right, you take photos, right? I'm like, no, I write stories, but all right, well, you're gonna have to learn how to take photos. And so luckily, being around Spike and Wendy on all these photo shoots, I had a feel for what you do, and how to, where to stand or how to, shoot up and get a good shot, so I'd been around it enough to where it caught on pretty fast. I was fortunate, and Denny showed me, what metering, what to do. And we ended up, actually, I think we bought a camera not too long after that. We bought a nice Nikon F3 off of Steve Giberson.
Okay.
Or maybe it was an F2, but it was like whenever Geiby would upgrade to the next camera, we would always, I'd talk Clayton into, hey, Geiby's selling his own camera, So Giberson was always upgrading, and we would always purchase his whatever he had previously.
Well, we can see an upgrade already from when you were there, because when Tim and I were there, we had to buy our own camera. I remember buying my first Nikon F3 and my flash. And
yeah, I shot with an FM, the fully manual version. And when I started there, I had one lens. I had a 50 millimeter lens. So like most of the time, I liked shooting with a 50 millimeter lens. So and then like Denny started buying some telephoto lenses, and what was his? His was an FE, I think.
His was a F3, because I got an F3 also,
F3?
but I started with a Pentax, just a basic Pentax, and then got the F3 and then a motor drive. And then remember, Tim, we would all go, like Tim would say, well, I've got my 50 millimeter. I go, well, I'll buy a fisheye. Denny's got a 105, and we would like share. You'd be walking across the infield sharing lenses,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can tell, like I can tell if I look at those archives. I mean, those archives that you have, gOrk, I don't know if it was a spoken rule, but it was an unspoken rule that you're not supposed to put your name on any of the photos. Like the slide
here it comes.
sheet. So, this is a thing between Brad and I all the time. I took that shot. And he's like, no, I took that shot. I mean, it went on while we were there. And, but if it's a 50 millimeter lens shot, there's probably a good chance I took it.
Unless it has my name on it.
Unless Brad has it in his garage right now.
So, no, it was just funny, because Tim and I, we would do it to a fault. And there were times where we'd catch each other, and it'd be like, that's my shot. And Tim would go, you didn't even go to the North Carolina Nationals. And I go, that's still my shot. It was just that kind of just having fun. But so you started ABA, you learned photography. That's amazing. That's awesome, because I can hear that conversation.
Yeah, and one of the biggest compliments has come from Wendy. And almost every time I see her, she'll bring, actually Wendy and John Carr both will always tell me, like, man, you turned into such a good photographer, that's the best compliment, coming from those two, BMX Hall of Famers and awesome photographers.
Yeah.
For them to say that, another big compliment I got is like after maybe the third issue of the American BMXer and all the changes that I was making. Cause I figure, okay, BMX Action's no more. So now I'm at ABA and I, have a
Yeah.
newspaper, but I want to make this newspaper, bring that magazine touch and improve the newspaper
Oh
from what,
yeah.
longer stories and better photos and better layouts and,
Oh yeah.
just all
I
that.
saw the transition. Yeah, I saw that transition immediately. As soon as you started working there, I'm like, man, this thing looks like BMX Action. The stories are cool. The layouts are awesome. Uh,
Thanks, man.
yeah, good job, man.
Yeah. And, I have a letter still to this day from Rich Long with, just out of the blue, get a letter from Rich Long after the third or fourth issue. And he's just like complimenting me how much better the newspaper looks. And, congratulations and great job and keep up the good work. And, it was just really cool that Rich Long went out of his way to write a letter to give me a compliment.
For Rich to do that, that is a big deal. Yeah, that was cool. I mean, he, back then, and we forget because back then you actually had to type a letter or have somebody type it and then put a stamp on it and mail it,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a great transition. You had that opportunity to do that. Now you're at ABA, you made a transition again, but you were there what, 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I spent all the 90s, so it's 89 till 99. I was at ABA.
And then what happened? What made the change? You went to where? SBS, Seattle Bike Supply?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just the job popped up one day. They had heard that they had just let Rob Hughes, who was the marketing guy at Redline, they just let him go. And Shannon Gillette, told, he's the one that heard it. And he's like, hey, did you hear Rob Hughes? They let him go today. And I was like, wow, that's kind of the next job. That's a job I would like to do, and things were going on at that, just happened to be that week. There was some things going on where it's kind of like, wow, is ABA going to be sold or, we didn't really, there's all the rumors of gossip going around the office and, especially with Pat. I don't know if you remember Pat Shore, the accountant, she was the queen of the gossip, so it's like, oh, what are these people doing here? And what's going to happen?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think I remember she was there when we were there. Pretty sure.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so anyways, it was just kind of, the timing was right. And I went home. I couldn't sleep that night because I'm thinking all these things like, if I was at Redline, I would be doing this and doing that. And Redline at the time, they had John Purse. And at that same time, GT had just gone through bankruptcy and just gotten bought by the Derail Group. And, so GT was losing its good employees. Rich Long passed away a few years back. And, so it was a changing. And I'm thinking, man, Redline could, if they played their cards right, they could be the next GT.
So you threw your name in the hat.
Yeah. I wrote out a resume at like 1 a.m. and faxed it off to Chuck Cooper the next day. And he called me back pretty quickly. And here's a good story. So he flies me up to Seattle, and the only guy that knows is Billy D, who was my roommate, because he gave me a ride to the airport. And I'm just like, dude, don't tell anybody at the office, but I'm going up to Seattle to go work, interview for a job at Redline. He was kind of blown away, shocked, but he's going to keep it a secret. So I go up there, I get the interview, and they kind of make me a vague offer, and Chuck's expecting me to come back next week with an yes or a no. But next morning I go looking for apartments because I'm like, yes, I'm taking it. I didn't tell him yet, but I'm like, well, I better find a place. So I go looking around. I find an apartment, nice and affordable, nice little studio apartment, and pretty close to the SBS offices in Kent. And so I filled out the form, and I didn't even think about it. I didn't know that they were going to run my application through that same day. But current employee, American Bicycle Association. So by the time, and then I go back over to SBS and I tell Chuck, I'm like, hey, I just got an apartment, so I'm when you want me to start, And so by the time I fly back to Phoenix, Billy D picks me up at the airport, and he's like, dude, they know. I'm like, What? How do they know?
They got their arms crossed like they're afraid of titty twisters. And when you walk in the door, right?
Yeah. So the apartment complex had called Pat to see if I was
Oh Lord.
Get a credit check.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
yeah, credit check, see if I was actually my employer at the time. And Pat was like, why is this apartment complex?
I'm gonna commute, Pat.
So yeah, that was kind of funny.
Kind
So
of
at least I didn't
Those
have
darn credit checks.
took the air out of that balloon, huh? I mean, I bet your morning changed a lot. You probably thought you were just coming in, and all of a sudden you went in to see Clayton and BA, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I try to leave on the best of terms,
Sure.
because I'm like, hey, I'll finish out this issue, and I figured Billy D, because he was driving the ABA box van all around the country, and I'm like, Billy D could probably do be the next editor. You should give him a chance. He knows all the writers. He's in touch with what's going on, and so that worked out for them for the next couple of years.
Well, that explains
Well-
that, because there was a time when Tim was working doing the videos of the races, and that fell within the time after you had left and
Yeah.
before you came back. And then I was consulting ABA under a contract. Did you know that? And helping them with some growth things, and even making the transition to the Olympics, and helped him get on the Today Show and a bunch of things like that. And I wondered, I was like, I think I even said to you once, Tim, so where'd gOrk go? Wasn't he, he was here and now he's not. And because it was like, I think maybe 03 was when I was doing that, maybe 02, 03. And
06,
when
7,
did BMX go into the Olympics?
2008.
2008? Okay, so you're right.
Yeah.
I'm always wrong on the
But-
dates.
I mean,
I'm 29, by the way.
there's so much to say about your time at Redline. I mean, Redline exploded again, and the team, Bubba Harris on the team, and how
Yeah.
well he did as a pro, and you really showed your skills at running a marketing department at a major company like that, and a team. And one quick story. Somehow I connected with you, and you sent me a Redline cruiser. It was just the Chrome Molly cruiser, and it got me back into racing while you were there. And that probably was about 2002, 2001, maybe
Yeah,
even 2000. Yeah. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You still have it?
I don't. My friend who was the UPS driver loved Redline so much, and I had upgraded and went to like an aluminum frame, and he's like, man, will you sell me that Redline? I'm like, yeah, as long as you always hang on to it, Rod. So
Yeah,
See?
Redline.
He didn't even keep
Redline
it.
was,
I didn't
Redline
even
was such
keep
a
it,
good-
but I did appreciate it.
but yeah, the
Or-
whole Seattle Bike Supply crew that it was Seattle. Redline was a division of Seattle Bike Supply, and
Right.
huge bicycle distributor all around the country. Probably the number 2 in distributor in the U.S. next to stepping right below QBP. So their staff, as soon as the day that I went in for the interview, like Mike Albright was one of the sales reps, and
Okay, I know
it was
Mike.
it's kind of funny. I walked in the front door, and there's a cubicle, and you see Mike Albright, his head, he's like, "Well, gOrk, what are you doing here?" And had to lie. "Oh, I'm on vacation. Just thought I'd stop in." But that was the atmosphere. All the sales reps right in that front office, and got to know them really well. Doing the Inner Bike Show, and just doing all the promotions for them. So that they can sell as many Redlines as they can. So. Just the whole operations of Seattle Bike Supply was great.
Probably a great experience and a learning experience on top of everything else, right?
Oh yeah. Like, do you guys know Chuck Hooper at all? Did you ever deal with him?
I met him
Never,
once. Didn't
I
really
never
know.
met him, but
Yeah, like out of, my mentors in BMX, first it would be Oz, and then going to ABA, Clayton was a really good mentor. And then going to Redline Seattle Bike Supply, the ultimate mentor was Chuck Cooper. Chuck, who's in the BMX Hall of Fame. And, he started off as a bike shop, BMX dad who opens a bike shop, and then, gets in with Seattle Bike Supply just down the road. That's where he buys all his parts from. And eventually, he kind of fills in for Terry Heller, who was the founder of SBS. And then Chuck, eventually they hire him on as to be the president. And then
That's
a little car trivia there for Brad. The ownership of Seattle Bike Supply and Redline was a guy named Mike Warren. Do you know that name?
It doesn't ring a bell, but where's it? It's not Warren Winches, is it?
Yes.
Yes,
Warren.
I figured that's where you were going with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So him and this other guy who was more into the real estate, but Mike Warren, he sells Warren winches to GM for
Okay.
multi-millions of dollars, and he has, I think it was down in Oregon, probably 400 acres or something, and his own little airstrip. And he was into flying airplanes, and just had more money than he knows what to do with, but wants to make all these investments. So he was like the most hands-off owner. Like he would call Chuck once a year just to tell him a good joke, and that was about it, So and nobody really knew that Mike Warren owned Seattle Bike Supply and Redline.
That's
But
great. That's
long-
awesome.
as long as the company was profitable, which we always were, they were pretty much hands off.
So what led to leaving and going back to what would be now USA BMX?
Yeah. So when I did leave, they had just hired BA, fresh out of college.
Yep.
And actually, when we traveled nationals, BA and I would all usually room together, just, everybody had their own roomie, got to have two people to a hotel room, so
Oh yeah.
the ABA way. So BA and I, we'd talk a lot. So when I left, we all knew that, okay, once Clayton retires, they're positioning that, BA is, getting mentored by Clayton, and BA is going to be the next, he's going to be running the show whenever Clayton decides to retire, which happened to be the 2008, after the Olympics, Clayton called it quits and BA stepped up. But as soon as BA did, he was always, whenever he'd see me or whenever we talk on the phone, first thing out of his mouth was, "Are you ready to come back yet? You ready to come back?" And I had kind of told him when I'd left, like, "Oh yeah, I might be there for 5 years, kind of under the conditions, like, yeah, maybe I'll come back someday." And so anyways, BA constantly hounded me. And so, 10 or 11 years later, he talked me into it.
He
So
broke you down and got you back
so
to
yeah,
the desert.
there was there were no hard feelings when you left the first time. Obviously, they welcomed you right back.
yeah, and I kept that relationship going because Redline was sponsoring the Gold Cup when I started there, and then my first contract negotiation with him was, I want, just like NASCAR has the Winston Cup, I want the Gold Cup to be called the Redline Cup. So, we signed the 2-year contract on that, and we kept the Redline Cup going for 10 years.
Sometimes employees leaving the company were the best thing for them. I mean, you did that when I left. I sponsored the Grands. It was like that happened a lot. It was. There were some other people that did that too. Went to other companies and came back and sponsored.
I still have Redline Cup hats and Redline Cup. I have a jacket. Is that a Redline Cup? Yeah, there's a Redline Cup yellow plate behind me.
Yeah.
So it was a big deal. I mean, red lines were everywhere. All the new kids at the track were starting off on red lines, and I don't know what Redline's doing now, but it was big.
So you come back, to ABA, and you're the creative director. What does that mean?
Oh, when I first came back, I was my first title when they brought me back was chief communications officer.
Okay.
So they gave me a big fancy title, and
Yeah.
but it was a really good offer. And at that time, my daughter was just starting her senior year, and she was, when I moved up to Seattle, that was the hardest thing, was leaving her back in Arizona.
Mm.
And so the timing was right when BA, finally, kind of talked me into coming back to ABA. And at that time it was ABA, but then by the time I'm really, we had the date set for when I'm gonna come back to Arizona, all pending on if we can sell our house in Seattle. BA calls me and he goes, "Dude, we're going to buy the NBL, and we're going to change the name. It's going to be USA BMX." And so all that came down like the month leading up to right when I was hired there. So right when I got there was when, all right, we're USA BMX now, and it's like,
Massive change. Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty wild.
Fresh, a fresh new start. I mean, wow, with twice as many tracks and a lot of people to bring together the two sanctions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And they just changed the name of the magazine to Pole. And Richard Huvard had done the first 3 issues of Pole, with his agency, with the Need 3 agency. And so then once I got there, they're like, all right, we want you to do the magazine, which I was more than happy to step right back into that position.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually they hired a kid out of Idaho, Jason McGuire, shooter McGuire. So he was the editor. I was kind of managing editor, and, so I could do other things, all the press releases, and kind of handle the communications like I was hired
The
to
branding,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, all the artwork, like the USA BMX logo, the rider pack logo, I got to design that. I got to do a lot of cool, fun stuff for the company.
very cool. Well, let's jump forward a little because we're going to run out of time. And
Yeah, there's so much more we want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean there is, and I know there's a lot more meat there, but I know Tim and I really want to get into the Hall of Fame and the museum because it is such a big thing for BMX. First of all, when it was in Chula Vista, and I went down there a couple times for the Hall of Fame, and it was nice. It was very nice, but I haven't been able to come, but I've seen the photos and I've seen the pageantry. But first of all, there was the negotiation with the state of Oklahoma and the city of Tulsa to locate it, and that comes together so that there's actually a home base and something that you can really call I don't want to say it legitimizes, because BMX has been legitimized, but how would you describe it, gOrk, when that transition was made and it was going to be, and what was it like for you to make a transition again and go to Tulsa?
Yeah, it's big changes. I mean, I've always felt like, I'm going to go where the job is. I'm going to go to Southern California and try to get a job in the bicycle business. I'm going to move to Arizona because that's where ABA is. So I've never had any problem with going somewhere if the job needs you there. So when that first came about, they were talking about the whole entire Arizona staff moving to Tulsa.
I remember that. Yeah.
But pretty quickly they discovered, like, no, everybody's pretty well settled in Arizona. No one's going to, there's only a few of us that, would consider going to Tulsa. But yeah, it was a big deal when, so it all came down to city of Tulsa. First, they were wanting to get it built in Arizona, and that didn't happen. And Gilbert, the Gilbert City Council or the mayor kind of put a quail on the and the neighbors, where they were going to build this awesome facility in Gilbert, Arizona. All the neighbors, they came to the Winter Nationals and they seen Black Mountain and all the dust and all the traffic, and they're just, they put up a big fuss, and it was the election year, so I think the mayor kind of got cold feet on it and canceled out put the vote on hold. So when that didn't happen in Gilbert, that's when Tulsa, with the Tulsa Sports Commission and the city of Tulsa, they love ABA because we held the grants here for the last 20 some years. So city of Tulsa stepped up and they're like, hey, we'll take you. So John David, who was the VP at ABA at the time, was up until just about a couple of years ago. So John David kind of spearheaded the whole thing. He was the big sports tourism guy at ABA. So he was in tight with Tulsa, with the sports commission, and also the guy who's working our USA BMX Foundation right now, Ray Hoyt. He was working for Tulsa Sports Commission at the time. And so Ray's always been a good ally with ABA and USA BMX. So yeah, they put it in the voting package. It was called Vision 2025, I think. And ABA, bringing USA BMX to Tulsa was just a tiny smidgen of a huge tax package. So the citizens of Tulsa voted yes on it, and that's how we ended up coming to Tulsa.
That's great. And were you involved in once got the go ahead? Did you get to be involved in the planning of the museum and of the facilities and things like that?
Yeah, the museum is kind of my baby. For a while, we had a marketing guy, and he was wanting to go with this big giant. It was a company called DI, and they did the Evel Knievel Museum.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, if you guys have ever seen that, I mean, it's really cool. I think they're moving it to Las Vegas here pretty soon.
I heard something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Kansas somewhere. Topeka, I think. But Evel Knievel Museum, and they did a lot of cool digital stuff. Like there's a wall with the skeleton of Evel Knievel, and you touch whatever bone you touch, touch his collarbone, and it pops up with what jump it was and how many times he's broken it, and
Man, that's pretty neat.
Just every bone that he broke in his body is all on this big digital screen.
You could do one of those at the BMX Hall of Fame with Tim,
Yeah, well, I was thinking that, there's a lot of guys that could have that display.
Yeah, Matt Hoffman would be the BMX.
Matt Hoffman. Boy, that's for sure.
And then if you touch the injured area, it can make a sound effect or a scream, depending on what you touch.
The sound he made when this happened. So
yeah, so that company was originally, and they were taking the ideas, that I had sketched out, and then they improved upon them. But it turned out that they were wanting to charge us like some crazy $250,000 or something.
I can only imagine.
Yeah,
I mean,
way out of our budget. And so then that's when it's like, gOrk, you can just do it. The ABA way. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it on a budget.
Well, you've done it in sections, haven't you? I mean, like,
oh yeah,
you probably you scaled it back at first, and now you've added things as you go. And
yeah, we're still not even up to phase 2. Like I have, I think 5 or 6 phases of the museum.
Okay. Yeah.
Scattered over the next 10 or 12 years, until I retire in my 70s.
I was gonna say 10 or 12 years. I think you're younger than we are, but in 10 or 12 years. Well, with that job, with your job, that's the kind of job I would do well past retirement.
Yeah.
That's another dream job. You always get the dream jobs, gOrk.
It's from what I've
not as good.
Well, what I've seen of the museum, you've done a hell of a job, because I like how you encapsulate eras and the riders and the bikes and the photography. I know you've called me a couple times. I know you've called Tim a couple times about certain photos and like that. And it's always exciting. It's when I have an interaction with you about the museum, it gives me a little excitement, because I'm like, hey, they're using one of my photos. Or recently when I was able to send you something that you didn't have in your archive, it was cool. It's always fun.
Yeah, the coolest thing is that, like, I keep telling people, this is the final resting. This should be the final resting place for all things BMX. Everybody who has all of your stuff in your garage you know, where's it going to go after you're gone? Everything should come here. And like I have this huge 100-year timeline up here on the wall. I don't know if you can see it here. The big timeline.
Yes, I've seen that in the photos. Yeah.
So it's a 100-year timeline. It goes up till 2069, and 1969 to 2069. And
I hope to be there.
yeah,
What year do I die? Can
unless
you
I
look
live,
up there? What year do I die, Gork? Does it say?
yeah,
Don't talk that way. Don't talk that way, man.
that's what I tell people. It's like, unless I'm live to be 107 years old, which would be kind of cool, but I'm not going to get to see this timeline completed, which is kind of a reality check. It's kind of makes you think like, wow, there's still plenty of years to be filled in, and a lot of history and significant moments to be made. And it's fun to point that out to like these young kids. Like Gage Gomalicki was here at the Grands, and he was just standing there like in awe, looking up at that timeline. I kind of nudged him and in the shoulder, and was like, dude, you're going to be up there someday, aren't you? And you could just see the gears turning in his head. It's like, he's the future. A kid like that.
That's now. What year do we say BMX actually started? I mean, I know what I think it is, but what at the museum and the Hall of Fame, what do you call the beginning year?
So I go by
official BMX.
I go by Oz's history, by the book of Oz, the complete book of BMX that Oz did. Mm-hmm. And I go by 1969 at Palms Park.
Okay. Because that would put us at next year coming up on 55 years then.
Yeah.
So what's planned at the museum for the 55th anniversary? He's like, damn, you put me on the spot, Brad.
Actually, so it's cool. So this year, 2024 is so significant, and it's such a bummer that it's just being, no, it's not being taken advantage. Redline and Mongoose both celebrating their 50-year anniversary. 74 was when the Motomag came out. The Redline Fork was
good point.
1974. So 74 is pretty significant. Yamaha Gold Cup, and just in September, we're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Yamaha Gold Cup finals in the LA.
Yeah, and it's the Yamaha motorbike first year then too.
Yeah,
74.
And there's nothing being celebrated. I remember in the automotive industry when we had companies hit 50 years, it was a big thing. I remember when Ford had the 50th anniversary. I was part of that. Helped them with it when it was of the of their 32 Ford. Then it was the 70th anniversary. Then it was the, those things should be, you're right. Those should be celebrated. It's,
yeah. Cause when I was at Redline, that's when we did the I think it was a 35th anniversary kit, and I had big plans already set for the 40-year anniversary of Redline. And, unfortunately I went back to ABA. So they didn't really do much of what I had planned. I was wanting to do the 40 on 40 Redline, the top 40 Redline products and the top 40 Redline riders, and make a big coffee table book, and started it, but never got it finished, or they never did anything with it. And then this year there's 50-year anniversary, but they just have nothing in their budget, and Mongoose is saying the same thing. Sad.
What about the museum itself? How do you promote the museum? How do you, do you have budget for that to let not even just BMXers, but people that you want to say, look at, this is the history of BMX, or as a destination point?
Yeah. So a lot of the visitors that come in, they're just, we're all over the Tulsa, what to do in Tulsa. And, it always pops up. There's people that are just driving through town, and, oh, where should we go? And, so they just find it either through Yelp or the Tulsa visitors website or whatever, or just Google Maps and like, whoa, there's BMX museum here, So, it sounds interesting. So a lot of people, just visitors, come through that way, or the ones who know about us, and as if they're coming through town, or they'll, or out of their way just to come here and check things out, because they've seen it on social media, or heard about it through a friend of a friend. And but yeah, on a weekly basis, like we're just winding down our summer camps that we've been doing. We have a weekly summer camps here with about 30 to 50 kids each week. And then we also have field trips coming through. We had one yesterday that was pretty large, and it's pretty cool to see the school buses pull up, because we work a lot with the Tulsa Public School District. So TPS is constantly, sending student, field trips over here, and they get to try out BMX. They get to hop on a bike and get them a loaner helmet and put them on a mongoose, and they get to try out BMX. And they come in here, they check out the museum, learn a little bit about the history of the sport. So it's pretty cool, on a weekly basis.
That's really good. Yeah. Now,
When I was there last October, I think you were telling me that sometimes like tour groups come through, like if there's a conference for a different topic and people are in town, groups just come through because it's a local destination point. And can't people also have meetings there too? I think you were telling me you could have meetings there.
Yeah. Right over here is we have these two big classrooms, and so that's where we'll rent that out for everything from birthday parties to, like, Cash Matthews, for instance. He has this local group. It's called the Bong, the BONG.
Okay.
So it's the Business Owners Networking Group. So
okay.
So
Yeah.
Cash once a month, the first Tuesday of every month, the Bong meeting happens here, and that brings in about 100 local business owners from the Tulsa area into this building, into this classroom to do their little network.
And what a great way to expose all those people to the museum and to BMX. And they might have a son or a grandkid or a nephew that might want to start racing. And so I think that's a great aspect of the whole facility, is that you do offer the meeting rooms and the tours.
Yeah. Like last year, the Live Golf Tournament, before the combined back with PTA, but the Live Golf Tournament was in town in Tulsa for a tournament. So they had their like pre-Live tournament, kind of a player introductions happening here. We've hosted the Black Wall Street Biker Rally, which has been really cool the last 2 years. They want to keep coming back. We set up a big stage and they have a band, and the whole parking lot's just filled with bikers. All the, it's pretty wild.
That's cool. So very much like a lot of large museums where they have event sites, and you've got with their parking lot, and with that, it gives people not only a place to have their biker rally, but then something interesting for the people to come look at and check out. And that's cool. What would you say, as the curator of the museum, what is the most significant item that's on display right now? In your opinion, that's how we're going to nail it down. In your opinion.
Most significant. That's a tough one. I mean, because we have everything from
gOrk, we ask the tough questions on this show.
Well, I'm just going to go with one of the newest things, which is right in front of me here, which is the DG California Pro. It's on loan to us from the Black and Gold California Pro number 23. And it's on loan to us for, we have a loaner program, so we get to display it for 2 years. And Kelly Swanson, the big time collector in Colorado, we have a couple of his bikes here, and he has some cool stuff. He's not into fully like tearing it down, stripping it down. You know, he's into keeping it original and really good. So this DG California Pro is like his prized possession. You know, it's black with the hand pinstriping, the gold pinstriping on the cranks and on the down tubes, and has the badge on it. So it's number 23, which it was bought by Jay Graves. Jay Graves, his parents ran Bike Gallery in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
And so Jay was a pretty good racer. If you look back in BMX Action, there was an Oregon race, and Jay was all over that one. And so Jay, after, you know, he took over the family business, and he took Bike Gallery from one shop into, I think at one time they might have had like 6 stores going, you know. So Bike Gallery is huge in Portland, Oregon. And they've since have sold it, and I think it recently just became a Trek store. But Jay Graves, he was always really involved in the Bicycle Dealers Association, and you know, a real you know, a big voice in the bicycle business. So anyways, it's
we just saw Jay Graves. He came down to Dirty Fest in April.
Oh, did he?
With Ben Joy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, Jay Graves, I remember you.
Yeah.
There was a picture of him in BMX Action, like a mud race.
Yeah. So anyways, that's a really
cool.
That's a pretty significant bike. But you know, we also have Dennis Dane's side hack over here, so that's one of my favorites. Probably my favorite.
Yeah, he told me that was there. Yeah.
Is you know, we've expanded. We're just about to expand more on the Gary Littlejohn history. You know, when Gary passed away a few years ago, last year, my brother and I, we got to go out to Vermont to his house before his daughter put it on the market, and she gave us a lot of the Gary Littlejohn estate. So it was pretty neat.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
Hey, speaking of your brother, I have to ask, I mean, until I saw that museum that you're sitting in, one of the coolest museums I ever saw was the bike shop museum at your brother's bike shop. Did any of those bikes get shipped to you, or does he still have that museum?
He still has his walls are still full of frames, but yes,
okay.
A lot of the frames that you see up behind me here on the big wall of frames,
right.
A lot of those came from my brother's bike shop, because he was always kind of the keeper of the ABA museum. So if a frame was given to ABA, and you know, they had no place to display him in Arizona, so he always held on to him and displayed them, and then take them down the wall, take them off of his wall once a year to go out to Oklahoma, and we'd have the Grants Museum.
Right.
So we always said he was the unofficial ABA Hall of Fame museum before, you know, now we finally got
official. Yeah. I remember one time, it would have been about 2004 or 5 or 6. I was in Arizona, and BA was taking me back through the warehouse at ABA headquarters, and he's like, here's our museum, and he's just pulling like some frames off his shelf. I knew there was more. One other quick question too. There was a blue RRS Cruiser that you guys had at your bike shop museum, and
a blue one or a red one?
It was a blue one, a blue RRS Cruiser. Do you know where that is?
I know we have we had a red RRS Cruiser that came from Bill Morris, who I think Bill might have gotten it from you. I think was
from Bicycle Harbor days.
Blue.
Yeah.
It might have been blue, but it's another one of those classic stories of, oh my God, why didn't I keep that Cruiser?
So you said you have phases to go. So is there back rooms that have things that will someday be displayed that you just haven't gotten to yet?
Yeah, there's some kiosk ideas that I have. Phase 3, I think, will be getting more interactive displays.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where like a build a track, kind of almost like imagine Legos, but those Lego pieces are jumps, step
Yeah.
up, tabletop, or rollers, and here's your big Lego starting hill, and so kids could actually build kind of a Lego, BMX track or something. So that's like I said, phase 3, down the road, or interactive, build a bike, which would be you know, pick the wheels, pick what frame you want, and it just pops up on a screen. Uh, that's a little bit closer to being done, but it's still quite a ways off,
Very cool.
So
Brad, when you mentioned is there a back room or an archive? I just pictured, the History Channel documentaries where the woman's going back into the archives with gloves on, looking through parts. Do you have like a secret area with like stuff that no one's allowed to see?
we do have a Hall of Fame storage closet that, all the stuff
Okay.
that's on display goes in there, or the stuff that's about to be displayed. So like right now, well, actually in my office is the archive room. So that's where all the photo archives, and then we on one wall, and then the other wall is all the magazines. And we're still looking to fill in the blanks on a lot of the magazines, because this is library number 2. We still have the Arizona library, which is
You have the what library? I'm sorry.
Arizona offices.
Oh, Arizona. I thought you said Corona.
Yeah.
I was like, Corona. Okay, I got you. Arizona.
Yeah,
Brad, you need to get there and see gOrk's archives. I mean, that is the most amazing library of magazines and publications that you can imagine.
Yeah, I do need to get there. I really do. Okay, so let's. I mean, we could talk about this museum forever. We've got to wrap this up tonight. But let me ask you, BMX Hall of Fame. You brought it up, and what are you? How does that work? And I'm trying to do this for the layman's. I know I vote every year, and I know how that works. But for the people that don't, gOrk, how does it work? How are you involved? And when do you guys start looking every year? Because it's people always think, oh, they do the voting and then they announce, but it's a big process.
Yeah. So right after the ceremony, which this year it's September 21st, is going to be the Hall of Fame ceremony here. We got an awesome every year. The class of inductees is just amazing. This year is really cool. Bobby Woods getting in, Maris Stromberg's, Kim Hayashi, and all wide range of all these freestyle. Hugo Gonzalez and Jeff Watson is finally making it in. So and Jay Miron's getting in as the modern day freestyle guy. So as soon as right after the induction ceremony, so probably like October 1st till the end of January is the nomination period. So anybody can nominate anybody. So Tim, you can nominate Brad, and Brad can nominate Tim.
There you go, Tim.
Whoever you guys want to nominate,
I nominate the same guy every year.
Tim, you can't nominate yourself.
Who do you nominate, Tim?
I nominate Joe Bombers from Nebraska.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
The other half of the Grubbs Bombert dynamic duo.
Yeah. It's a good one. I want to encourage more people to nominate, because that's where it all starts. You can't get Hall of Fame without being nominated first. So there's a process. So once we get that nomination list, whether it's 20 people or 40 or 50, then that goes to each committee. So we have all these committees set up for each of the categories, the early racers or the modern day racers or the industry category.
Right.
So that nomination list gets broken down into the top 8, or actually they bring in 5, because last year's top 3 or second, third, fourth place from the previous year, they get carried over automatically, and we want to fill the gate of 8. So the committee will select 5 more to add to those 3, and that's the grade 8s that will get voted on. And then the voting, there's about four 450 people on the voting list. Get about 400 votes a year. So there's, about 50 slackers who won't vote, or they're not getting the email or whatever. But they and we're looking to expand that probably for this year. Once
I always wait for that email to come, and I always start thinking, they took me off the list this year. Then it comes. It usually comes right after I start thinking that,
Yeah. There's always, we get hounded. I didn't get my email. It's like, check your spam folder or whatever, it's like, that's
well, that's great. That's great. I mean, the Hall of Fame is, it's got legs now, and it has been around for so long now. And Tim and I still aren't in it, but that's all right. Hey, okay, let's wrap this show up with one last thing that we want to talk about. And this goes back to, you mentioned the archives. Well, Tim and I are intimately linked forever to those archives because of all the races we shot, all the bike tests, everything. What's it like to go through those archives from time to time? BA allowed me back years ago to just go in there and go through everything. And that was before it was organized at all. It was just a bunch of filing cabinets in a closet behind Cheryl's desk, and I kind of went through it, and I was just amazed because there were things I forgot about, but what's it like for you to go through all that? And you've got decades more,
Yeah, actually, recently I have actually been going through your guys' era because I'm compiling for all these state Hall of Fames that are popping up. I mean, Nebraska's had you guys were the first state Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
2010, we had our first Hall of Fame year.
Yeah.
And I see it's really taking off
right
now.
there. Right there.
All right.
But I mean, yeah,
it's really taken off, and we're wanting to encourage. That's on BA's list, is to work with a lot of these state Hall of Fames and encourage more to start up. So like Florida's state Hall of Fame. I have Arizona State Hall of Fame in the works, which you guys could maybe also help out and be a part of, So, we have all these, and I have a wall here in the museum where we're going to add something, we got to figure out how to pay tribute to all these state Hall of Fames. New Jersey State Hall of Fame just announced their inductees. So to help those guys, we started off a list. It's been a huge task over the last probably 3 months, is compiling every district champion of every single district in ABA. So actually
of every state and every district. Wow.
Every state, every district. So it's pretty,
that is a task. Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. We're up to date up to, I think, 2011. So hopefully from, now we're in the USA BMX era, and hopefully we're not going to have to go through with a magnifying glass and look at all the points anymore. Hopefully we have that all digital, recorded.
Is that what you needed that issue for that I sent you? Is that why you were looking at that?
Yeah.
Now it all comes clear because you were looking for a specific listing in an issue you didn't have. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's just one page had been torn out, and I was looking in, I think it was Utah. I was like, who's the Utah one district champion? I don't know who it is. So thanks for sending that, Brad. I appreciate it.
No problem. It's if I can, my archives, are fairly good. I have some good stuff, and it'll probably make it to the museum someday.
Yeah, hope so.
So have you found anything that you just went, wow, I never anticipated this in all of the archives that you're going through?
Yeah, I mean, there's some cool stuff. Like I just finished scanning all of Chuck Robinson's long lost archives. I don't know if you guys
I've been looking at those.
Gone through that rabbit hole, but man, before Chuck killed himself, he gave Travis Chipras the key to his storage.
Okay.
And so Travis goes there, and wasn't very many things left, but Travis, who rode for Robinson and knew Chuck pretty well. So among the few things that were in his storage unit was this collection of photos. So Travis has held on to them for all these years. He's, moved them from Southern California to Utah and just had them, just has kept them. And finally last year he gave them to, he's been telling me about them forever, but he's like, I just got to dig them out. There's too much snow on the ground right now. So I'll get to them Sunday. So he finally did. And that's just a treasure trove. It's a rabbit hole that you can spend hours looking through all the Chuck Robinson photo archives. There's some good, really good stuff.
Yeah,
there.
you can also spend hours going to USA BMX photos on your website.
Yeah,
because every time I see a new race, I scan through, I click through. Okay, I know I was at that race. I know I was at the race. Oh, damn, there's no pictures of me there. But sometimes you'll find one. And everyone else around the country is doing the same thing. So it's great that you've scanned those in. It's great that you've made it an archive that everyone can seek through.
Yeah, actually, Brad, were you at ABA when you guys bought Norba?
Yes, I was. Yes.
I believe so. So
Bob Hadley was in the office right next to me for a long time.
Okay. I got to quiz you sometime and find out the whole story on the ABA buying Norba. I've heard stories, but I'd like to hear the real thing. But I was telling Joe Breeze at the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame, I provided all the Norba photos to him, and anything I find in our archives that is Norba related, I'll send it to the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame, just for that portion of BMX or
that
Norba.
little sliver of time. Yeah, that was an interesting time. Yeah. Yes. So
a lot of the photos I found in the Norba, was, I saw your name on some of those photos. And
yeah, I shot some. It was, we'll have to talk about it sometime. It was my name on them, Tim. It was my name on them. No, but no, this has been great. It's been a great little peek into, the Hall of Fame, your background, everything that you've done. And what we didn't mention is, when we mentioned the Hall of Fame, is that you are in the Hall of Fame. 2010, you were inducted. And so congratulations on that. And, it shows your love of BMX and biking and everything, because you never gave up. You stayed with it. And, I know Tim's like that. I steered off of my bicycle path, but never really, because it's pretty obvious, as Tim knows, I always kept my bikes. I always kept my memorabilia. Because it's such a big part of all of our lives.
Absolutely.
Oh, so, that reminds me, Brad, I was going to wear this shirt when,
here we go.
On the first show. Yeah. There we go.
Your Eddie Van Halen stripe. Nice. My pal.
Very cool.
Eddie.
Yeah. Your pal, Michael.
Yeah. Those guys are great. And little bit before the BMX days, we actually talked about that once. And because up at the studio, Eddie used to have a BMX bike that he rode around, because his house was one place and the studio was up here, and he would just ride it up and around. And the one thing I remember about that bike was not what kind of bike it was or anything like that, but it was the fact that he had an aluminum bodied Lamborghini Miura, and he would lean the bike against it. And I'd just cringe. I'd just be like, oh, you're leaning that bike against that beautiful car. But yeah, he had an old Mongoose that he rode around. It was really cool. It was like full on era bike. It was like he just bought it somewhere and I think kept it around forever. So it was pretty cool.
Wow, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, you got the style there, man. You're full on. and Michael and Sammy are out on tour right now. I talked to Michael this morning. Yeah. He was in Rhode Island and had a day off. Like, oh, what are you going to do? And he goes, I have no idea. He goes, I'll probably walk to Starbucks, because he's just, it always sounds like the rock and roll lifestyle, but when they're in a hotel and they don't have anybody with them and they're just bored, day off.
When I see pictures of you and Michael Anthony, I'm like, you two could be brothers, It's
People
funny.
say that all the time. Yeah. I know. But that was just one of those. He's a great guy. He has just been a dear, dear friend. And the one thing I always say about Michael is that he's just a regular guy who happens to be a rock star for a living. I mean, I know I've gotten to know a lot of other, musicians and like that, and some of them are rock stars, but Michael is just a really cool, down to earth guy.
Yeah,
So.
a few months ago, I went to a buddy of mine, Kenny Denial, who's kind of a rocker BMXer dude, now lives in Nashville again. But he gave me a call and he's like, "Hey, Slaughter, my good buddy Mark Slaughter is they're playing at the Hard Rock Casino, so do you want tickets?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, that'd be cool." Come to find out, Mark Slaughter was a big, he grew up in Las Vegas and he raced a little bit, and it's just interesting. We have a board in the back here in the museum of all the before they were rock stars or
Cool.
before they were superstars or NASCAR drivers or whoever, they were BMXers. And, everybody from, Jeff Gordon to, Lance Armstrong, there's this Slash, Slash was such a.
Well, there was that age group, and every single person either rode, raced, or had a BMX bike. And I've told this story before on the show, so I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but I've been in meetings with studio executives, and they're in their suit and tie, and you bring up something like Vision Streetwear or BMX, and they become kids again. And it's really, really cool. And that's always fun. We got to wrap this thing up, man. We've been talking forever, guys. It just keeps going. But anything that we missed that you definitely wanted to make sure that we hit on, and then after that, maybe some websites that people can find you at.
Yeah, I'd just say if you come through Tulsa or you have a chance to come to Tulsa, and you gotta, this is a must see. Come here right now. Admission is free. We're talking about maybe charging next year $5 or $10 to get inside, but right now BA is just like it's free for all the members, and anybody else that shows up. So
that's great.
Nice.
Nice.
I enjoyed my visit there, and I plan on coming back again in September. So,
all right, we'll see you here.
Yeah. And where can they find you online, gOrk?
So USA BMX is on all over the place on USABMX.com. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and BMX Hall of Fame is a separate Facebook page and a separate Hall of Fame or Instagram page. Shannon and I kind of tag team on the Hall of Fame stuff. So we do a lot.
Very cool. Well, we just got a lot of history, a lot of years, and a lot of great little stories and information. And now it's like we got to have you come back like every year to tell us how the museum's progressed and where the phases are going. And I would love to have, wouldn't you, Tim? Just if he adds something, just let us know so we can talk about it on the show. Like
absolutely.
Segment. And that would be awesome. Some of my other podcasts, Tim asked me earlier, I said, we just did episode 447. So we're hoping that we'll be talking here one day with episode 500.
Yeah. Well, good luck with the show. And thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate everything you do, buddy. I mean, it's just an amazing thing you've got going on there.
And tell everybody hi for us. And we want to say thank you for watching Super Rad BMX. Don't forget, if you want to listen to the audio version, just go to iTunes or anywhere that you listen to podcasts and go to Super Rad BMX. And be sure to hang around for that commercial so you can see some of the swag that's coming out. It's super rad. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back next week, and that's a promise, not a threat.
This is the Super Rad BMX podcast. Down the first straight is the cruising Cornhusker over the jump bonsai Brad. Now your host Brad Fanshaw and Tim Lilladora.
Get ready to represent the Super Rad BMX podcast in style with these Rad BMX t-shirts. They're perfect for listening to your favorite Super Rad BMX podcast episodes, hitting the track, or cruising around town, and showing off your passion for BMX culture. Join the Super Rad BMX community and showcase your love for this podcast with these awesome vintage BMX t-shirts. Order yours today on radmatic.com and ride in style.